Welcome to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm your host, Kristen Root, and I am Program Director of Hingham Cares. Our mission is to reduce substance use among youth in our community. We want our kids to make healthy choices around drugs and alcohol, so we provide information to teens, parents, and the community at large about the risks associated with teen substance use. On the show with us today is comedian actor Steve Sweeney, who has been assigned the title of the undisputed king of Boston comedy. Steve grew up in Charlestown. He earned a BA in theater arts from UMass Boston and a MFA from the University of Southern California. We're delighted to have him here with us today. And today, our guest is comedian Steve Sweeney.
I thought I told you, comedian actor.
I'm sorry, comedian, actor, radio personality,
Jesus.
all around.
And a Hingham youth, hello. Graduating this month. Jeez. Go ahead.
So we're delighted to have you here.
Should be. God.
You are living up to your title of the undisputed king of Boston comedy.
This is the height of the career, being in an industrial park here in Hingham and Weymouth.
Was there any discussion about the term king, undisputed king of comedy? Were you emperor?
You know, it's
was
like
that
when
thrown
people
out?
introduce me as a legend. Here he is, legendary comedian, and I say, I'm not dead. You know, I had a guy come up to me on Boylston Street in Boston, swear to God, he says, Steve Sweeney, I saw you do comedy 30 years ago at Nick's. Do you remember me? Oh, yeah, Jesus. That's all I've thought about. Now I can go on with my life. Do you mind if I give you a hug? So, yeah, I started as an actor, and I fell into comedy, and this connects to substance abuse, actually. Mm-hmm. So I should say right off, I'm so clean and sober 30 years, but
yes,
I work in the field, I work in jails, I did a program for kids. But anyway, when I was an actor, a stage actor, I mean, I've done a lot of films. I've done almost 30. I just did a fantastic movie. It's called The Greatest Beer Run Ever. It's about a neighborhood in Manhattan that keeps losing people. Have you seen it by any chance? Any of you should see it. Russell Crowe, Bill Murray. Mm-hmm. The guy goes over to visit his friends. It's about war and about learning about it. Anyway, so when you do stage work, you have to learn your lines. It's a very disciplined craft, and I was okay. I mean, I was, you know, I really had that. And then when I started doing stand-up, which I fell into, of course, there weren't even any comedy clubs. It takes place in bars and restaurants. So then I was around booze, and it's kind of a long story there. But I think I'm going to give you a brief drunkalogue. So when I talk to kids, like, what I've found is kids or young people that have a goal, okay, they're less susceptible to peer pressure. You know what I mean?
You're right.
So, you know, we went in and we did role plays, refusal skills, and goal setting, very important.
When you say you went in, where did you go?
Well, we went everywhere. I had a program, it's called Speakers for Hope, which I partnered with the Gavin Foundation. So we went into Dorchester High School. I went into boys clubs and girls clubs. I went into Charlestown High, where I graduated from, and Plymouth. I mean, I was all over the state, and it was a very interesting experience. It was very eye-opening because there's a lot of like misconceptions out there, and now it's, you know, with, you know, the marijuana dispensaries. It reminds me of when I used to do that program. The kid would raise his hand and, well, you know, and some of them are like intellectual, you know, it's like, isn't it like marijuana gray area, you know, and the kid who was doing that is usually selling the grass to the other kids, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But when you find out what you're passionate about at that age, it gives you something that you can get high off, because we all want to get high, you know, but like for me, it was acting. As soon as I got on stage and I felt that rush, that got me that feeling that drugs were supposed to give you, you know. So anyway.
So when did you substitute that feeling for drugs?
Well, you know what it was? It was more like I would use enhance it. I come from, alcoholism is in my family, so it's a very it's a strange kind of phenomenon that you can't explain unless you are one. It's the kind of thing where you drink to change how you feel, and you don't drink to be social. It starts to have a life of its own, and you realize you can't stop.
It becomes an obsession, almost.
Well, what we say is it's an obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. In other words, the obsession is thinking about it, but the compulsion is once you start. So what was that commercial, Jay Leno? Bet you can't just eat one. With some Fritos or something, you know what I mean?
Lay's potato chips.
Yeah, Lay's potato chips.
We're going to get them to underwrite this episode, right?
Yes. So, anyway.
So did you use substances when you were younger, or
No,
did it start?
I'll tell you what happened though. I experimented when I was a kid. You know what I always say is, if I was growing up now in Charlestown, I would be doing all of these horrible drugs that are out there, the opiates, because we just did whatever was in front of us. So I did LSD, and oh my God. Can I tell you there is a humorous part of all this. I mean, I can laugh at it now, and I couldn't, when you're in the middle of it, you can't laugh. But anyway, I took LSD. It was 1969, and Led Zeppelin, first American tour, Newport Jazz Festival. And when you're doing acid, you feel like the band is playing to you. It's like that kind of music. And I think maybe they even realized that. Anyway, long story short, so in my brain, I never had a good trip. So the music came down, and I could hear Robert Plant's voice. Steve Sweeney. Yes, Robert. Come on up on stage. So that was my first arrest. But anyway, yeah.
So you didn't start actually. You
I experimented. But when I was 19, I became an actor, and I was very disciplined. My work was my drug. And it's a consuming thing to learn a part. You learn the part, you learn your lines, you go to rehearsal, you try to physicalize it. In my comedy, my heroes were like Lily Tomlin and Gilda Radner and Jonathan Winters, Peter Sellers as an actor. So I do character work so I would become these guys, and I still do that. I do Fauci. We weren't ready at that particular time for that particular. Anyway. Then I got involved in stand-up, and we were working at a place in Cambridge called the Ding Ho Restaurant. It was a Chinese restaurant. And then it started, the Mai Tais. And there was an actual drink called the Suffering Bastard. I mean, how's that for a prelude to addiction? So it was the 80s, and cocaine was not supposed to be addictive, I really did hear that cocaine was not addictive.
I think they say that about every new substance or every.
Well, when I was at
substance.
CLX, I had a kid who was interning, and he was doing ecstasy, right? And it was really, he was the nicest kid too, and he would tell me, he says, I go to these parties, and he said, and I'll go to a club, and all I need is water, and I start to feel my body, and I dance, and I have this connection. I said, wow, so there's absolutely no downside to this. He said, no. I said, well, when was the last time you slept, by the way? It was 3 days ago, right? And he got arrested. The Patriots won the Super Bowl. He got arrested running through the fence naked. Anyway, so every generation has the misinformation. So my addiction got worse and worse, and it was a feeling that I can't describe except that I became, there's no such word, but I became deader inside. I just drained. And when you're talking to kids, which I still do, they always think there's this moment, well, what made you stop? And for me, it wasn't this dramatic moment. It was what we say in the program is I get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Now, the other thing I say to kids, and I hope some of them are listening, is I was at the comic strip in New York, and everybody was doing coke. And I remember really clearly that Eddie Murphy turned it down, right? He understood it's a business and it's a craft and it's something you have to focus on in order to get better at it. And his career just went through the roof. Now I had a lot of success. I did HBO Young Comedians, then I got a call to do the Letterman show and all this. But I just really remember that. I remember, like, it's like I work at Plymouth House of Corrections, and a lot of the guys there, they want to do what they do. And I say to them, look, you're all addicted to something. It's like, no, not me. I said, okay, the fast money, right? So, they sell drugs. Some of them do drugs, guns, all kinds of stuff. But in the same time, what I've heard over the years, it's been 10 years for me working in jails now, at Dedham, Springfield, Plymouth, as well. The thing I really want to do is be a good father, right? So they don't see any contradiction,
Oh, that's what you've heard them say?
Yeah.
I just want to be a good father.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they want to be a good father, but they want to make money quick.
Right.
It's called fast money. So what I say to them is you got to go to Home Depot, you got to work 40 hours, and you got to look at your check like everybody else and say, I can't believe this is so small. That's called 9 to 5, but you can sleep at night. But I've learned so much from the job.
Well, you've touched on two things that we talk about with Hingham Cares with regard to prevention. Two mitigating factors are accessibility and modeling. So you mentioned that if you had grown up in Charlestown now, you'd be doing some of the drugs that are available now because they'd be accessible. And then you also just said that you want these adults to be modeling good behavior for their kids, regardless of whether it's substances or something else.
One place I used to go when I had my kids' programs a lot was Scituate High School. And Scituate had a big drug problem. So the first thing you have to do is you have to break the denial. You can't deal with something unless you admit it exists. So a lot of the parents, like, the mothers doing something, finance, whatever they do, and the father is also doing something. So, with all its faults, when I came home, there were people at home. So after school, if a kid doesn't have somebody at home, sometimes there's a lot of stuff, and they always say there's nothing to do. That's one thing kids always say, there's nothing to do. And it's very important to learn how to do nothing. It's important to take a walk in the woods. It's important this is what I used to tell them, you rent a kayak down the Norwell River, you play basketball, you do things. And then it's the adult's job to provide those things to do.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff. The main thing when I was talking to kids is like, you walk in, I'd be walking into Dort High, these places, what's this old white guy going to tell us, right? So then I say, well, I did a movie with Denzel Washington called The Equalizer, and I stood up. And all of a sudden, I got a little bit of cred. But so my program, what we did was we had kids talk to other kids. And I had a girl from Charlestown. She was a hockey player. She was up for the Olympics, and she started robbing banks. Do you believe that? Young girl. She did time. Then I had another girl from Charlestown, and kids listen to other kids. And
was that substance related?
Yeah, that's what the whole program was. Are you listening, Kristen?
The criminal behavior. I'm paying attention.
Yes. Well,
the criminal behavior.
That's another.
Mike has something to say.
Just need to don't tap the table.
Mike just told me not to tap the table.
He doesn't like fidgeters.
Oh, fidgeting's fine. Just don't fidget.
No, I was warned about Mike before I came here.
Yes. He's got a reputation.
Do you know who used to do this at this table was Rush Limbaugh. He'd always come in here to Hingham. Do you remember he used to do that? He'd bang on the table, Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, it's good to laugh. And so, you know, it's really not just about the kids. It's about the community and it's about the parents. And you can't baby them either. The kids got to want it. I can't tell you, Kristen, how many kids I had in jail. You know, that's what's happened.
You mean like a generational thing was happening?
Yeah, friends of mine's sons were in jail.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant people that you had worked with 30 years ago. Now
Kristen,
all of a sudden their
have
kids
some coffee. Pay attention. Jesus Christ. Is this ADD show? Oh, my God. Duly diagnosed here.
How much more time do we have? So I have heard you say that you don't like downtime. You don't like to sit still.
I never said that.
Well, you've been fidgeting this whole time, so I think
I didn't come to Hingham to be attacked for my fidgeting. No.
But there are
No,
lots of
I
other
did
things
not
that you
say
could have
that
done.
I don't like downtime. What I
You
said
told
was
Joe Rogan
what-
something to that effect.
What I said was the kids, which is why we're doing this. A lot of them say there's nothing to do. It is a challenge sometimes for people to relax and just be in the moment. But when you're 17 years old, you know, you want to do stuff.
But you said something to the effect of you started doing this kind of work to fill this extra time that you had.
Yes, yeah. Well, it not just the time, but to balance my life. Because when you're an actor, a comedian, you're so frickin' self-centered. It's unbelievable. You know,
Right.
I'm not much, but it's all I think about, right? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And it's like Marlon Brando said this about an actor. He said, an actor is a guy who's waiting for you to finish so he can talk about himself again. So it's good for me. It gets me out of my head. I used to teach college. I taught at Suffolk. I taught at UMass. I have a master's in screenwriting, and I like teaching. Gets me out of myself. I used to teach the first grade, believe it or not, in
No kidding.
Los Angeles.
Oh, my goodness.
What a frightening thought. I can see the terror on her face. Those poor
Where are those children now?
God. It was actually really funny because here I am coming from an Irish Catholic neighborhood, Charlestown, and I'm working with little Mexican-American kids.
I'm sure you got a lot of material. Kids say the darndest things.
Let me finish. I'm setting up something here.
Sorry.
So, this is actually funny, Kristen. So my name's Sweeney, and they could never say it. Meet the Dweeny. I said, what? Meet the Dweeny. He, my sister, meet the Dweeny. It was beautiful. It's a hard job, first grade. It's very exhausting. I was doing it while I was going to grad school. Mm-hmm. So, ask me anything.
Yeah. So
I love recovery, by the way.
you're clearly passionate about it.
Yeah, I am,
So
yeah.
what kind of programs do you implement with the prisoners that you
Well,
work
the
with?
the first thing is, as you pointed out, I'm a fidgeter. See, this is my resentment. I have to go to a meeting later. I have to pray for Chris.
Is my name going to be mentioned?
Oh, boy. So you have to learn how to sit still. So I meditate, I breathe. And the future is anxiety, the past is depression. So we begin with a 10-minute meditation that's just breathing deep. I go on retreats. I do that. I read Buddhist stuff. And so that's the first thing I do in the class. And then we talk about goals. We talk about issues and goals. We work from a book. Then we end the session with breathing. Deep breathing. I used to get what's called anxiety attacks. Now, what happens with that is you actually feel like you're having a heart attack. And I would go to the emergency room, and it turned out I was fine. My heart was great. You know, I walk, I run every day. So I learned this thing called box breathing. Breathe in 4, hold it for 4, you let it out for 4. And everything I learn, I try to pass on to my inmates.
Do you ever hear from them after they've...
You know, I see them at meetings, and I've had a lot of really interesting experiences. I had one guy who was doing my one-man show at the Cabot Theater in Beverly, and I'm on my way. He had gotten out that day, and he was going to see my show.
No kidding.
It was nice.
Wow.
Here's what I tell inmates when they're leaving. Go to meetings. Don't rob my house, because then I'll get a resentment. And take a walk in the woods. It's very healing when you've been behind bars and concrete. And just go out in nature. I mean, Hingham is so beautiful. I mean, we go to Wampatuck State Park all the time. When I say we, I'm talking about my dogs like they're human beings. Because, I still have issues. I'm sober, but I'm still... we go to Wampatuck and Bears Cove. I used to do a show every year at the Loring Theater. Will McDonough was a friend of mine for the Hingham Sports Partnership. Sports is big, interests, But I guess you have to be honest with kids. I mean, if you're smoking grass as a parent, I guess you have to talk. You got to be open about it.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Model that positive behavior, because as you know, the brain is not fully developed until the age of 24,
grass
25.
is a terrible thing, man, as far as emotional development, as far as impulse, reflexes when you're doing sports.
And modern day marijuana is so much more potent than it was 10, 20 years ago.
I'll tell you about the audiences that I have. Like, I'm clean, but that doesn't mean they're clean.
Right.
And the grass audiences, they get the joke on the way home. They're a little slow. Or if they're laughing, they aren't laughing at you. They're laughing at their shoes or the color blue or whatever. So, it's very important that people learn from other people's mistakes. And, I'm 73 years old, and I lost my 30s. I can't remember one day of them. So I'm just, whatever. If anybody's listening to me on this show, is just, if you feel like you have an addiction, if you feel that compulsion, if you feel that impulse, if you feel like you can't stop, get help as soon as you can, because you don't want to throw your life away.
Right.
Yeah.
By the same token, you talk about people needing to be ready to change.
I know. That's the problem. It's like with my inmates, sometimes I want it more than they want it.
Right.
But you just hope if somebody's got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, that, maybe they will take that one step towards getting into recovery.
Right.
You don't have to start. That's another myth, that's out there with young people, is like, well, you got to try. You don't have to start. And then the other myth is everybody's doing it. Not everybody is doing
Right.
it. There's a lot of things people think that aren't true.
Especially teenagers.
Yeah.
We see by the numbers that a lot of kids aren't using substances.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Right. And, but at the same time, the kids who aren't are thinking that they're somehow being left out. They're somehow not doing what typical teenagers do.
Isn't it amazing that
it is.
people still use the word cool? I mean, Frank Sinatra was using that in the 40s.
Right.
It's like, what's cool?
Right.
But sometimes, one of the main things is that your peers, who do you hang with, and get people that are interested in what you're doing. Like when I got into theater when I was in college, boy, that was me. Wow, I loved it. And you find other people that love to do it.
And you went to UMass Boston.
Went to UMass Boston, then I went to USC for graduate work, and then I came back to UMass to get a master's in counseling. So then I
interesting.
wonder why I haven't had a successful relationship, because I'm an achiever. I belong in Hingham, for crying out loud. Don't throw me out, by the way, when you see me here.
So you did receive some training. One of the questions that I had for you, we were talking about this earlier off camera, is that you have gotten a degree in counseling. You've received training.
I did my internship at Mount Auburn Hospital. They had a recovery place. And then I went to the Shelter for Homeless Veterans, which was great. It's wonderful work, actually. But I don't do it in the summer. Enough with the jails in the summer. Every summer I go to national parks. Last summer I did a 2-week hiking tour in Alaska.
Nice.
In May, I'm going to do a hiking tour, and I've never been to Big Sur in California, so there's a hiking tour from Santa Cruz to Monterey, and the whole world opens up when you're not using, and, you know, life is exciting.
You said in an interview that you feel well rested.
Oh my God!
In recovery.
When I went into High Point, you know, you gather around in a group and you say, well, what do you want? And guys want their family back. Somebody wants their job, whatever. And I said, I just want to be able to rest. I was so exhausted. It's like a full-time job, drinking and drugging, you know? And then I was 6 months sober, and I woke up one day and I said, wow, what is this feeling? You know, I was well rested, you know?
How long had you been using at that point?
Oh, Jesus. 30 years. I drank for 30 years, and I drank and did coke for 20. So I was tired. It's exhausting. And it's a waste of time.
Right. It robs you of so much.
Yeah.
But you didn't have an aha moment. You just kind of got to the point where that fatigue and that lifestyle caught up with you.
I'm having an aha moment now with you, Kristen. There were a lot of what we call jackpots. A lot of bad things happened. You know, it's funny, people have regrets and some people don't have regrets, whatever. We say in the program is I won't regret the past. But there was so many things that I did that I would never do when I was sober and clean. And one of the biggest struggles is to forgive myself. You know, it's funny that people, like how we all are, like Matthew Perry's got a book out.
Right.
From Friends. I don't know whether you've heard of it. It's like, it's amazing that, you know, you can have the outside stuff, and he was killing himself, you know?
Right.
Isn't that something?
Right.
So,
Well, I think that's part of the craft, is that you're faking a lot of things. And so you can even fake living a sober life.
well, I think, you know, it's funny, when I started my journey, I thought it was, you know, we were kind of unique, people that worked in bars and everything. And then I hear, well, I'm an iron worker naturally, you know, well, lawyers have a big alcoholism rate. You know, it's something that goes way beyond what you do for a living.
Right.
Yeah. So God bless the kids of Hingham.
So if you
Or as
had...
Joe Biden would say, where am I? Anyway, go ahead.
If you had a piece of advice, just
Yes.
one singular piece of advice for kids, not
right.
just in Hingham, but kids all over the world, what would you say with regard to substance use?
Wow. Look inside yourself. Look inside of yourself. Meditation is a good way to do that. Find that place in yourself of human potential. Now, not everybody's going to be an actor. Not everybody's going to be a teacher. But there is something that you have inside of yourself that is meant to develop. And if you can focus on that, find out what you really like to do. That passion can get you through these years, like 16 to 21 or something. What do you really love to do? And find out what that is, then invest in that. And whether we want to be or not, this is the second part of the advice, we are influenced by who we hang with.
Right.
And say to yourself, and I know it's hard when you're 17, like, where are these guys going to be in 5 years? And where are these guys going to be? You know, and where do I want to be? And one of the things I had to do when I got sober is I had to change my friend. I had to, like, not hang with my friends for a year. You know, it was just such a powerful thing. Because your world gets smaller and smaller when you're drinking and drugging, you know? So find out what you love to do, hang with the right kids. And if you think you have a problem, go to the guidance counselor. There's like Alka-Teen, and there's all kinds of other young people that have addictive personalities. I have an addictive personality. You know, my two best friends are Ben and Jerry, you know. This isn't over for me, believe me. I act out with ice cream and all kinds of stuff. But you, if I was talking to a young person, you are the gift to this world right now. Because I don't want to say we've screwed it up, but there's a lot of stuff we are leaving you that's not so great. So one of the things I'm encouraged by is, and like my father's generation, there was a stigma attached to alcoholism and addiction. So one of the things I'm encouraged with is, as strong as the epidemic of addiction is, sort of like the environment is as strong as, like, environmental damages, the environmental movement is very strong. And I feel like the recovery movement is very strong. And also, if you're an adult, wow, you've got to learn how to listen. And you know what? We can talk about all this all day too, but the villains in the back here are all these drug companies that are making money off all this. They get you addicted, and then they give you a drug to get you off of it. And there was a state senator, Steve Tolman. I used to lobby up there for my program, and it's a big problem. It's not just some simple answer, but if I was just talking to a kid, that's what I'd say. Find out what you love.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
What would you say to parents?
Parents, go ahead.
Yeah. What would you say to parents? What advice would you have for parents in raising kids around substances?
Don't move to Cohasset. Stay in Hingham. I feel very unequipped to talk to parents about their kids. I really do. But the more you know, the more you can pass on. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like you said, wow, people don't watch what you say, they watch what you do.
Right.
So if you're getting drunk around your kids and whatever, but that's about all I have for parents, Jesus.
Well, that's really poignant because we always say no parent wants to place their child in harm's way. No parent wants to model bad behavior for their kids.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lack of education. So I think you're spot on when you say that parents need to get educated so that they can make better decisions about themselves.
You know what you got to do?
And also have conversations with their kids.
My brother is like the greatest father in the world. He's got 3 kids. And he said something that's really, you have to think about it, And my brother was very successful. He was a lawyer and all this. He said, I don't believe in quality time. I believe in quantity time. I said, wow. You've got to actually spend time, hang. That's what develops the trust.
Be present.
Be present a lot. Mm-hmm. Go to the games, all that, and just hang.
Right.
You can't come in, spend an hour a week with them. Now I'm going to tell you about drug abuse, I thought
it's disingenuous,
that was good.
too. I think that's a little disingenuous.
Sure it is. I wish if I knew what that word meant, I would agree with you. Disingenuous, okay.
How can I dumb that down?
Disingenuous. Wow. How can I, do you talk to all your guests like this?
Cut that part.
No, I'm just kidding. How can I dumb that down for this schmuck from frickin' Charleston? Let me dumb that down for you.
I regularly have to break out the dictionary for my husband. He's like, I don't know what you're saying. Well, this is what it means.
Look at the face she just made about her husband. I hope that the husband's not. She just made this face. Let me dumb that down. So listen, we're all in the same boat.
Yes.
I mean, whether you're a parent, whether you're a kid, whether you're just an interested person, it's a problem that we all have to address, right?
Absolutely. It's a community effort, for sure.
Yeah, and don't stop doing it just because you're over the Weymouth line. Oh, Jesus. I'm at the Landon. I can't think about this anymore. Or Norwell. Jesus. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is really great.
I'm glad you're doing this work. This is God's work. It's important. And you just do what you can. And the best way to develop trust, whether you're a parent or anybody else, is to talk about yourself, focus on yourself. I've had a struggle with this, I worry about you, whatever. You talk about your own feelings with a kid, and then you develop an alliance,
Right.
and you're both on the same team. And when they screw up, you just say, okay, let's pick up from here.
Well, if you're honest with your kids, then your kids feel comfortable being honest with you
Right.
in return.
Yeah, and they may not have the language that you have, the skill set. How's that, Miss Disingenuous? It's not bad for a dummy, huh? Thank you.
This was great. Thank you so much
Keep
for your
up the
time.
good work.
Thank you. I would like to thank Steve Sweeney for joining us today and for participating in this really thoughtful conversation. You've been listening to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm your host, Kristen Arute, and I hope you will join us again.